On a recent parish visitation, I had the chance to meet a remarkable man. I just finished celebrating Mass for the residents of a home for the aged, and I was calling in on some of those who couldn't attend the Mass in the lounge room. So I came upon this man who was sitting in the sun and who greeted me with the words, "Buongiorno." And I said, "G'day." We began to chat, but I was surprised with the way in which he so quickly started telling me about his life. His name is Filippo. He came to Australia when he was a young teenager. His family had sent him out from Italy to live with an uncle and to work on his uncle's farm. And he'd worked very, very hard, a lesson that he learnt well, for he himself would work hard for the rest of his life. Filippo eventually set out on his own and was able to buy a dairy farm in the southwest. And he worked hard to make that farm provide for his family. He worked and he worked, and he achieved his goal of giving his children the education that he had never had himself. Then he told me a wonderful thing. "You know," he said, "I worked very hard. I did many things, and I'm proud of what I achieved. But what was the greatest thing was that God gave me the best thing. God blessed me with my wife. She was the greatest blessing in my life. And He gave me more. He gave me my beautiful children, and I'm so proud of them. They've come as a blessing of God. My wife and my children have been great gifts to me." I found Filippo sitting outside in the sun, seated contentedly and deeply happy for the life that he's had. He fully recognises the goodness of God, who he considers his friend. He would have been happy with receiving only half of the blessings that he has received in his life. But he can see that God has been extravagant with him. I left that conversation with Filippo thinking on how he might have nurtured his marriage. How did he know what he should do to build that close and loving relationship with his wife? Of course, he had already had the experience of living with his own parents, within his own family. Then of coming to this country and living with another family, with his uncle and aunt. He learnt a lot from these experiences. Of course, with his wife, he would go to church, he would hear the gospel preached, which encouraged him to mature in his faith. So this, I believe, has helped him to form a very positive adult relationship with God. He learnt how to see God in the great number of events in his life. I think Filippo has learnt to trust in the goodness and the mercy of God especially when he looked over his life and especially in those tough times. In that reading of St. Paul today in our Mass, we hear Paul speaking about each of us having been given a share of grace.
Sorry.
This is to help us, this grace is to help us to succeed as humans, to succeed as Christians, to succeed in our vocations of marriage, of holy orders, of religious life, and of dedicated service that some offer in the single vocation. So Paul, in that reading that we heard this morning, names a hierarchy of these gifts that these gifts of grace create. Beginning with apostles, then prophets, then evangelists, pastors, and then teachers. St. Paul, from his own experience, had discerned that God has given this hierarchy of services in order to secure a unity within the Christian community and to build that Christian community up, to build up the people of God. He could see that the grace of each, that each receives, is given for us so that we might grow to maturity in our faith, that we might find ourselves more and more conformed to Christ himself. So you, the couples who have joined us today, you have received graces that have been meant to help you succeed. And we honour them today. We honour you for the many years of committed love that has been possible because you have used this grace the Lord has given you in marriage. Your families and those closest to you, I'm sure, are able to recognise the growth that has occurred within you over these years because of the mutual support and sometimes the challenge that you have issued to one another. They might also have seen your faith and your trust in God deepen. There are many people like Filippo, like yourselves, many young people who seek to enter into this marriage covenant and to begin this journey together. I wonder whether it is possible to think of how you, with your experience, might be able to contribute to the beginning of their journey and the ongoing support that might be needed by them as they journey through their marriages. In that regard, I'd like to thank Derek and his team who work in marriage education in the diocese for the work that they do in preparing couples for their marriage, but also seek to find ways in which they can support the couples throughout the years of their marriage. There may in fact be further opportunities to develop a network among you where you might be involved in that work of support for couples through their marriage. So I go back to Filippo. I guess today he's sitting out there in the sun. I'm sure he's very close to the end of his life. And yet I'm very consoled to think that he's sitting there deeply grateful to his loving God, contented with the ways in which God has worked in his life, the ways in which he has come to know this God who is has been a true Father to him. Please God, that is where we will find ourselves at the end of our lives, contented with the blessings that we have discerned in our marriages, the graces, the many graces that have been given to us by our loving Father who has called us to this sacrament. That we might also be able to sit there happily in the presence of a friend who has been our companion throughout our journey of marriage.